This one might be shorter, not just because of the Super Bowl. I'm not even watching the Super Bowl. Maybe you guys are. Um, Thinking through all the things that I could talk about this week, instead of piggybacking off of the phrasal verbs live stream from last time, I just want to focus in on one weird interview advice that I heard that I need to call out or criticize, or I think that's just going to be the focal point of today's stream because I just can't get it out of my head. But before we get into that, let's do one vocabulary lesson. Let's talk about the word anecdotal. Um, you might hear it in news clips, but anecdotal evidence is just really talking about personal experience. So we don't want to diminish personal experiences. You live your truth. You go through certain things that are very real. But because it happens to you, is it a universal? Does that mean you went through this experience? Anybody else who goes through the same situation, they are going through the exact same experience? We don't know without more information, without more data. So let's go through a couple examples of these, right? Um, I always think of an experience in college talking about legalities, right? So the legal tip when you get pulled over by the cops and the officer asks you, do you know why I pulled you over? It is to your best interest to say, I'm not sure, officer. Don't give any leeway beyond that. Now, my best friend's wife, she said, no, you got to fess up to exactly what you did. In my experience, um, I told the officer, I'm so sorry. I know I was speeding. I know I shouldn't have done it. And the officer let her off with just a warning. He didn't write her up. He didn't give her a ticket, right? Now, this is a really good example of anecdotal experience because anybody else in that situation, if they immediately said, yes, I knew I was speeding, I knew I shouldn't have done it, I'm so sorry, does that mean that they're off the hook? Maybe it could happen, but it's not a rule, right? It's not a rule that you fess up, they'll be nice to you as long as you're nice and polite. That's the distinction right there. Like, to me, that's the key way of me remembering the term anecdotal. Okay, so very, very boring pretense and setup. But let's switch topics real quick. Let's talk about interviews. You can have all sorts of advice. I think the way I distilled it before, being really familiar with your experiences, being comfortable to talk about what you've done in previous jobs, strengths and weaknesses. It's a cliche, but it's a common thing that people would discuss. Accomplishments that you've done in a role, problem solving, getting familiar, talking through those things. And how deep and how far you want to be rehearsing those things is up to you. Hey, MD Razel, thank you for joining in. We're going to be talking about a weird interview advice story that I heard here in just a moment. Heston Hansen, hi, thank you for joining in. Hope your Sunday is going well. I'm going okay. I need some more coffee, is what I need. But after the stream, I'll be jumping in. How are you doing on this Sunday? How are you doing on this weekend? If you, um, the people who are tuning in, if you can think of a time that someone gave you weird interview advice, I'd love to hear it. But yeah, I think the basics, unless you go into a very specialized job where you really need to know the material, maybe it's PhD level, or maybe it's very specified and it really requires a certain amount of expertise, that's when the advice for interviews can be a little bit differentiated. Caliber, Campbell, that's your name, right? Heston Hansen, Fortnite dubs. All right. Have you been enjoying the Fortnite ballistics mode? Or do you think Fortnite Ballistics came out at a wrong time when Marvel Rivals is kind of usurping everybody's game time? But yeah, Caliber, thank you for joining in as well. Hope your Sunday's going good. If you guys have predictions on the Super Bowl, you let me know. If you guys know who's performing at the halftime show of the Super Bowl, let me know, right? And again, going back to weird interview advice. So These days, Sarah, Keith, what is up? Hope your Sunday's going well. Thank you for joining in. Um, so many job interviews, it's not always in person. In fact, the initial screening could be a phone call. A lot more interviews are happening on Zoom. And let's be honest, you have notes, you have things prepared. If you have a dual monitor set up, you might have stuff on the second screen, might be the company's webpage. Hey, maybe you did some detective sleuthing. Maybe you have the people who are interviewing, you have their LinkedIn profiles up on screen. All of that's fine. You have notes, you reference. When people ask you a question, you might kind of refer to those things, right? Kendrick Lamar. Oh, yeah. Thanks for bringing that pest in because I've seen people going crazy about like, oh, maybe Kendrick's going to make a political statement and call out the current state of affairs, and that's not going to happen. Um, he he's going to perform not like us, right? He's gotta, right? I think I saw Kendrick in a perfume commercial recently, and dude, Kendrick, get that bag. I don't have an issue. He can do whatever the heck he wants. I just thought it was interesting to see him in a cologne commercial. Anyway, back. We're going to get to this weird interview advice story. So, again, people ask you a question, whether you have notes or not. You might need to take a second. You're kind of collecting your thoughts. If you take sneak a peek, you're looking at the second monitor you have to conjure up things. I think that's okay. Like, it might not be, your interviewer might not be in love with this, right? They might not be like, oh, he's clearly looking at his material. But as long as you can bounce back, you're captivating. Um, if you're charismatic or you just have a really good example, you have a really good way of answering and qualifying their question, no problem. But this interview advice I heard, and I want to be clear, this was in the realm of game development, not my expertise. Maybe there's a lot more flexibility and leeway with this. But this guy, he's been tenured. He's been in that field for over a decade. He's been part of um, how do I want to say it? I don't think he's like on CEO level, but he's been in senior level positions. That's what I should say. He's been on both sides of the interview, right? And so he was really trying to boast his qualifications on being able to speak to this. Social media is mirrors and nest 100%. It's a weird game that we're playing, and me just not really trying to grow here, but being back into a routine where I'm doing something, I have a schedule is healthy for me. So I don't think any of you guys are subscribed to my channel, which is totally fine. But it's very interesting to see who is going to pop up, who's going to tune in, who's actually participating and commenting on the live stream. And it's cool today. I think this is like my most active live stream on YouTube thus far. Heston, we'll say that at the very end. All right. Appreciate it, son. You have a good one. Heston, we'll let that be the closeout for the stream. All right. And I won't string this along too much longer. The story will just take another minute, I think, and then we'll close out. Okay. Um, so again, you have your notes, you have your material, you take your time to think. You might stutter, you might take a little bit longer of a pause than you mean to, just like I am in this live stream right here. I think that's all natural. I think if your interviewer is being a human being, they're going to be aware of that and they're going to be okay with how you proceed through the interview. But this game, the senior game dev, he said that if someone's asking you a question and you have your notes and outlines of stories, it's okay to say, wait a second, let me go through my list of stories here so I can pick the best one. Now, maybe that was his overall guide. Maybe he wasn't telling them to say that verbatim. But to me, that's weird. Because I've been on the interviewer side of things. If I'm asking somebody a question and they bring the interview to a screeching halt, they say, wait a second. hold on. Huh, I have a lot of stories here. Let me go through and read through, and then I'll decide, okay, this is the best story for me to tell you. That doesn't make any sense, right? Use the sound. Is there a way to do sound effects on? If there's a way to do sound effects to buzz it in, I think I know what you're talking about. Like with on Twitch, like if I was using OBS. Okay, if I clip it from now on, all right, I'll think about that. I do want to do more edited essay like videos on the regular feed, but anyway, closing out. Um, yeah, I think for whatever reason, maybe because that guy had clout, maybe because of his credentials, people were more forgiving for him to bring the interview to an abrupt halt and gave him time so he could consult his stories. But I think that's purely anecdotal. I don't think most people could get away with stopping the interviewer flow to say, "Hey, let me sift through my notes," taking more than 30 seconds for a few minutes to pick a story. I have a really hard time imagining that any of us could get away with that. So that's my weird interview story. There's other ones that maybe I need to collect them together and present it instead of thinking of it on the fly. But that's going to be it for me. Everyone else, stay warm. It is Boston is getting a lot of snow today, and I think a lot of snow in this upcoming week. We're getting hit by the winter this time after having years of mild winters. But enjoy the Super Bowl. Let's see what Kendrick does during the halftime show. Let's see if the game is entertaining at all. And signing off here, we got Sigma Rizzler for Heston Hansen. Sigma Sigma boys. Heston Hansen, Sigma Rizzler, Sigma Sigma boys. All right, we'll stop it there. You have a good one, bud. Take care. And probably stream on next Sunday. All right, take care, everybody.